Hey guys, welcome back to Honey in the Rock, episode 38. I'm Sophie, and today I have Liz Ryals.
Thank you.
I'm so excited. She is what would you call it? Talk?
Radio personality is the old school thing to say was DJ.
DJ.
I don't care.
She's a DJ.
Right? Some people get offended, and I'm like, as long as you're calling me, don't care.
But she works at His Radio, which is our local. It's actually more than just.
It is.
In both Carolinas?
It's in the Carolinas and Georgia, so we're in 9 different markets, everything from Raleigh to Savannah, Asheville, Charleston, Columbia, and then on the app. So we have, and I know it's not question time yet, but I'm going to throw it in there.
No.
But we have listeners in South Africa, Indonesia. We have a young girl named Zoe that listens in Indonesia, who's originally from Greenville, but her family's...
That's so cool.
Yeah, they moved. We have Sweden.
Yeah.
And so everywhere.
Right. I think I saw that. I heard that on the radio the other day.
Yeah, that we talked about Zoe.
Yes, and I was like, that's so cool.
It is.
And she did that. Who's that? Oh. So I'm like, I feel like when I heard your voice, I was like, I know. And I was like, oh wait, I hear you every morning.
Yeah.
I'm like, right. So that's so cool.
And we used to go to church together.
We did. Yes. I don't remember that.
No, you were little.
But my mom was like, you just have to ask her. So thank you for coming. So you have to tell, I was really shocked by this. You have to tell everyone what time you wake up.
3:30.
She wakes up at 3:30. When I wake up at 8:30, I'm like, oh.
Well, me too. By nature, I'm a night owl. So I'm much more designed. God knew what he was doing because I'm much more designed to stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning, get up at 8.
Yep.
Doesn't really work
for
me.
No.
So I go to bed. I go in my bedroom at 7:30.
Yeah.
And then I fall asleep at 9. So I get about 6 hours, 6.5 hours sleep.
Wow, that's crazy. And such you have to learn to sacrifice things. And
you do, because I don't get to do a lot of. I never go to a Wednesday night church ever. I never go to a Sunday night church.
Right.
Because I go to church an hour away from where we live as well.
Right.
So I have to find other ways. But thankfully, one of the good things to come out of the pandemic was we've learned how to communicate and connect with people virtually.
That's so true.
Yeah, and they've just started at our church a virtual Bible study.
That's so really
super
good.
I've been asking for it, and this is the first time. So
that's a blessing.
Yeah.
Being able to
be there comfy. Without being there.
Right.
I can be in my bedroom.
Right. You can be ready to go right to bed.
Exactly.
That's perfect. So with every guest on the podcast, I ask them what's their story / testimony, just so people can, know a little more of your story, even though I'm sure pretty much a lot of people here know you, but
they may not know that
your
part.
Testimony and your story of that.
So I thought I was raised in a Christian home. My dad was saved when he was much younger.
Right.
And he would call himself a Christian. He was saved.
Yep.
But we didn't live that way.
Right.
We weren't in church. There were a lot of dynamics that kept us out of church. A lot of times, and my mom knows this about herself, that she made it very difficult for us to go. And there was always an excuse. And so we didn't go.
Yeah.
So again, I thought I was a Christian. Right. I was invited to Vacation Bible School from a friend and went and gave my heart to Christ then. Yeah. But I didn't know how to live for Christ. I didn't know what that meant. I knew that I felt awesome when I got that relationship.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to cultivate it, and I didn't grow. So I was stagnant for probably a decade, and then realized I need more. I want more.
Yeah.
And started searching for it on my own. I met my husband, who was such a wonderful, God-fearing, loving man, and helped me through that process. Right. And so that's where it really took off.
Right.
And so I gave my heart to God when I was 13.
Yeah.
But I lived for God starting in my 20s.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And then now you get to talk about God as your job.
All the time. I will say that even though I spent 32 years in secular radio, that is exactly where I was supposed to be.
Right.
Being a light in that darkness. And it wasn't a dark place. It wasn't bad people. It was just secular.
Right.
Different values. But I was able to share my love for Jesus during that time. Right. My immediate boss was an atheist, and we had many conversations
Right.
about my faith.
Yeah.
He knew me before I gave my full life over to God, and then he knew me after.
That's really cool.
And one of the biggest compliments he ever gave me was, "You are still the same person, but I see that difference.
Right.
You're still the same person at your core, but now you live
That's
for
really
God."
Cool. And the part of like Jesus has where we are on purpose. You know, you were in that secular radio on purpose for that amount of time, so you could be a light to your coworkers.
Right.
And then now God has you where you are to be a light to your listeners.
Right.
Your coworkers.
Yeah. To those who know Christ.
Right.
Although I would say we have a lot of listeners at his radio that do not have that relationship with Christ.
Right.
But they're dipping their toe in the water. And so that's where we have to love on them and show them what being a Christian and following Jesus is all about. And so it's an incredible opportunity that we have every time we open the microphone.
Right. And even as a believer, like I'm a believer, I know where I stand with Jesus, but I get to listen to his radio and be encouraged. So it's really cool how it meets like all of like the believers, the old believers, the new believers, but then also the people who stumbled across it because they came into town.
Right. Or they heard a Christmas song.
Right.
Which we just had a story that came in this week that said they started listening during Christmas because they liked some of the songs that we were playing that were more traditional. And not all of them are, but the one that they heard. And so they stuck around. Right. And then it grew, and their entire family of like, I think she named 5 different people now have a relationship with Christ because of a Christmas song.
Right, right. It's like, keep Christ in Christmas.
Exactly, right.
I hear it.
Right.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's cool how the Lord moves in that. So, we just kind of answered this, but how can you use your occupation to proclaim Jesus as, before you were in the Christian industry of that? So before and then now that you're in it.
So before we would have parties, like when we would get a number 1 rating for the station, or we'd sell we'd meet budget or whatever. We'd have these parties, and inevitably someone would offer me a drink.
Right.
And I personally do not believe that it's in the Bible that you can't drink.
Right.
It is a stumbling block though.
Yeah.
And so that is, I don't want anyone to see anything that I'm doing and be able to say, oh, she says she's a Christian.
Right.
Well, look at her. She's over there, swigging down a bottle of wine or whatever the case is. And so I was able to just through that open dialogue.
Right.
Or when certain things were happening in my family, my dad passing away, and being joyful that he knew God.
Right.
That also spoke Christ.
Right.
When people had, we had one of my coworkers that had a heart attack. And at the same time, there was someone else that was having a health issue, and I can't remember. So I just put an email out and I said, if anyone wants to meet me at 8:30 tomorrow morning in one of our, rooms that we had, if anybody wants to meet me at 8:30 and pray, I'll be there. Right. And if I'm the only one there, that's fine too.
Right. Right.
And it ended up, there were about 8 of us, and we held hands and we prayed.
Yeah.
And I led that prayer, and I was able to love on them and show them what being a Christian is all about. It's not rules and regulations. It is love.
Right. That's really cool. Yeah. And then now that you're in working at his radio in the Christian, is it easier to proclaim Jesus?
It is. I think you're held to a different standard, which I'm okay with. Right. Sometimes we'll talk about a subject on air, and someone that's listening doesn't really care for what we've talked about because maybe it's Target or it's Disney or it's something that they don't politically agree with. Right. That's fine. Right. That makes it a little more difficult because you're still human. Right. And you feel like we should all be in this together, loving on each other and encouraging each other. And so in that way, it's difficult. Right. Not often, but every now and then. Right. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily easier. It's different. Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah.
And such an encouragement to see of like when, I go to a public school, it's not a Christian school. Teachers don't talk about Jesus, but how I can turn a conversation at lunch to that, or hey, we just saw that this terrible thing happened. As a, let's invite some classmates together. So I think that's just like encouraging to see of like, even if technically what you're in isn't called this Christian thing or centered around that, you can make it centered around that. And people will see that, and people see how you're different, and
absolutely
responding to drama or
right.
responding to, this hard thing and all the things and cheating on tests and like little things.
Sure.
People can see that difference in you. So
right.
cool.
Yeah, if you're a cashier at Walmart and you're ringing up beer, if you're ringing up whatever the thing is, you may not agree with that,
right?
But it can open dialogue because you can take a look at what's on the conveyor belt and say, oh, what are you doing this weekend? Looks like you're having a party.
Yeah.
And be able to, and you hope they'll reciprocate, well, what are you doing?
Right.
Well, I'm doing this. Oh, and I'm going, our church is having a thing on Saturday.
Right.
I'd love for you to come.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And to be bold enough to do that and not worry about what people are going to think of you. If they say, yeah, no, I'm not interested. Okay. Well, you tried, you planted that seed
and that's all it is that seed.
Right. So, and taking that pressure off yourself, and you just have to plant the seeds. You just have to obey in that way. So, what is the coolest opportunity you've had on His Radio?
I will say, because I'm program director as well as an on-air talent, sometimes we get opportunities to go on trips, meet artists, just see different parts of the world, and at the same time learn about our industry. And especially since I'm only 3 years into the Christian industry, I need to learn as much as possible. But I will say, in January, I got a trip of a lifetime from a record company that flew us to California.
Wow.
And I got to meet some amazing artists. There's an artist named Mitch Bloom.
Okay.
Mitch Wong. The song is called Bloom. And he's a brand new artist. And they took us whale watching. And Mitch played keyboard on this boat while we went out. Dolphin came up to the boat while he's singing CeCe Winans' Believe for it.
Yes.
Because he wrote that song.
Yeah.
Just won a Grammy for it. And that was incredible.
That's so cool.
So we had whales. We had worship music. I'm crying. I'm talking to the dolphin and the whale.
That's so cool. Yeah. And then, I hear some on the radio I was listening, but what's just the coolest story that you've heard of that you're, able to share of just like either people come to Christ or people hearing or change? Like,
I'll share Cooper's story. He was 8 years old, and his family was already listening to his radio, and it was during one of our fundraisers.
Okay, yeah.
And so I don't know if they were struggling financially. I don't know if it was just a decision that they made as a family that they were not going to financially support his radio. And that's fine. That's absolutely your choice. And so Cooper, 8 years old, in the back seat on the way to school, said, Mom, why aren't we giving to his radio? We listen every day.
Yeah.
And she said, well, it's just not something we can do right now.
Right.
He said, well, I want to give up my snack money. So evidently she gave him $5, $10 a week, whatever it was for snacks. Fast forward between that time when he's 8, he's now 11. He has learned to play drums because he wants to play drums in his praise band at church.
So cool.
He and his mom have started a 501c3, a charity.
Yeah.
And they provide blankets, I think it's jackets, scarves, mittens, the whole thing for the homeless.
So sweet, yeah.
And so these things are just snowballing in their lives.
Right.
And I've seen that transformation. It's not because they gave to his radio. It was because Cooper felt in his heart that he needed to do something.
Right.
And he is living Christ out every day. He wears his radio jacket to school, and it starts conversation at his age.
Right, that's so cool.
And he's bold about it.
Right.
He loves God. And so that's, I'm going to cry.
I know, that's so sweet.
He's so sweet.
That's so sweet. And that step of faith and boldness of I can actually sacrifice this. I think we forget, as we live in such a country of we can consume and consume. I realized, wait, how much money did I spend at Chick-fil-A this week?
Oh, sure.
Okay, well, if I actually look back and I could give that to the church, I could give that to his radio, I could give that to these nonprofit organizations. They're so, maybe just one time a week at Chick-fil-A, instead of consuming. And so I think we have to be willing to sacrifice and give that. So I asked this before you got here, or when you first got here. It's like, what you have to reshare that. So what made you want to be on the radio?
I think honestly, it was just something that I was born with. My mom and my dad, both gregarious. They're just, they never meet a stranger. And so when I was 6, I guess I was starting to make up little shows and try to do them in the living room. And so my dad found an outlet for that. And it was a hi-fi stereo. He put some microphones in it. There was like a cassette player. There was a turntable, and I think there was an 8-track. And so I would record shows on the cassette. Didn't know what I was doing, but I called it Wacko Radio as I got older. So it was WAKO.
Perfect.
And there used to be a television show called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. We did not have money. We lived in poverty for a lot of years. So I called ours Lifestyles of the Poor and Unworthy. And so that's kind of how it started. Just I would take parts of songs and make it the answer to the questions that I was asking and put that all together. And then when I got to high school, we had a radio station on campus. There was a band that I wanted to meet, Duran Duran. And that kind of got me, if I'm on the radio, maybe they'll come by and I'll get to, and that actually ended up happening.
That's so cool.
I ended up meeting them, I don't know, 15 years ago or something.
That's so cool.
That's how it started.
That's so fun. That's what I've always said. I wanted to be a teacher. And that's like, I would have like a little room in the house. That was my teaching board. And for Christmas, like my mom would go to Dollar Tree and get me teacher supplies, and I would be making people teach, and I would like read to my brothers and make them draw what I'm like learning about. So that really is so funny of how like as kids we just have this imagination, but it can be reality.
But you gravitate to it, and you just have to have someone honestly in your life that encourages that and helps you discover the avenues that it can lead to.
And just feeling so encouraged of like how no matter what occupation you're in, you can pursue God in that and be a light to the darkness in no matter what. Like if you're a preacher, you're being a light to the darkness to these people. But if you're on a radio host, or if you're in high school, or if you're just a mom, like there's so many ways to be a light in what you're doing. Just to like proclaim Jesus, but how we're living it out. It's like, yes, by sharing this is what the gospel is gonna move people, but also our lives have to be lining up with that. And so
you can talk about it all day long, but if you're not living it out, and if they don't see it in the way you handle every situation, we're all gonna stumble. We're all human. But if they see it playing out in your life in the hardest of moments, that's what makes the biggest impact.
And that's so good. Well, thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate this. And I love this room.
Thank you. I was like, I painted these, just to save some money. I was like, I'm not a painter.
It's gorgeous. It's cute.
Just a printer paper, and it'll work for now. Maybe one day we'll have an upgrade, but
for now, you need to sign each one of them so that when she gets all famous.
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for listening. Bye.
Bye.